Coming to you live from Johannesburg, this is Tonight with Jane Dutton. South Africa's inability to deal with commercial crimes 1 year after Steinhoff's collapse, and still no arrests. How do you feel about the President and his ministers getting a 4% salary increase in our current economic crisis? And with eyes on the screens and not life, are we raising technology orphans? That's Tonight with Jane Dutton. Tonight, the biggest corporate scandal and the biggest corporate failure in South African history. We're talking Steinhoff. And 1 year on, not a single solitary person has been charged. The former CEO, Marcus Jooste, still whooping it up in luxury while thousands of pensioners lose everything. There is something radically wrong with our justice system. Clearly, we aren't geared to deal with corporate crime. And we also have one of the most bloated public service sectors, and yet the President and his ministers are up for a 4% increase. Shouldn't they rather be giving back, considering how much is squandered under their watch? What have they done to deserve this? And then technoference, when your life is spent on a tablet looking down and not looking at your partner or your child. How much is too much? They'll be becoming a generation of socially inept, emotionless techno-geeks. Those are my questions. What are yours? You can call us on 011-759-3640 or tweet us on hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. But right now, it is the news with Shahan.
Thanks, Jane. Appreciate it. Our top stories tonight. Firefighters are battling a blaze in Alexandra, north of Johannesburg. It's believed to be one shack that was set alight and then the fire spread. More than 500 structures have since been destroyed. A community representative says emergency services were slow to respond.
The first call that we made to get assistance from the EMS and the officials is that it went to deaf ears. Yeah. And up until now, I can tell you now, you can see the EMS fighters, they can't do anything because the fire engines came here, they don't have water. I went to the local fire engine department station here. Yeah. They told me that they don't have fire engines. I even drove further to Sandton to get one. They told me that they don't have one. So it means these fire engines that you see here, they came as far as Cosmo City and Midrand.
Eskom says it's trying hard to keep the lights on this festive season. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan says all senior Eskom managers are being asked to cancel their leave. They're being deployed to power stations to deal with the rolling blackouts. Gordhan says the shortage of electricity is caused by the breakdown of aging infrastructure. He says a task team will soon be appointed to help the utility deal with its operational challenges.
Between the 15th of December and the 15th of January, there is lower demand in any case because of the shutdown of industry and so on. And no load shedding should be expected during that period, and the management must give us the assurance that they're working towards that particular objective. When we come back, or the country comes back to work around mid-January, up to the end of March, we want to know within the next week what can we tell the public.
And the SABC appears to be in disarray. The presidency has confirmed it's received resignation letters from board members. They were appointed last year. Their mandate was to resolve problems at the public broadcaster. Their resignations leave the board unable to function. This comes as the SABC plans to retrench around 2,000 employees as part of a cost-cutting measure. The broadcaster needs 3 billion rand to continue operations. Now, thousands of miners and their families could face a bleak Christmas. Workers have been on strike for 2 weeks now at 2 gold mines. They've already missed a paycheck because of the no work, no pay rule. AMCU-affiliated workers at Sibanye Stillwater are demanding higher wages, and NUM members at South Deep Goldfields are protesting retrenchments. The union is denying prolonging the strike because of infighting. There'll be more news at 9. I'm back at 10 with NewsHour. For now, it's back to Jane.
See you then. Thank you for that, Jahan. But it is a year since South Africa's biggest corporate fraud scandal broke. No one has been charged. Yet investors, including South African government employees, lost billions of rands of their pension fund invested in Steinhoff. And corporates are not the only guilty ones. The authorities are battling to bring those involved in siphoning off billions from the VBS Mutual Bank too. They're also trying to unravel the corruption that has led to the collapse of several state-owned enterprises. There's a glimmer of hope. A few high-profile wrongdoers are being criminally charged. Bonang Mateba recently landed in the specialized commercial crime court in Johannesburg for failing to pay her taxes. Duduzane Zuma, son of former President Jacob Zuma, is facing charges relating to his alleged attempt to bribe former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas. Well, tonight we speak to Michael Barker, commercial crime expert from Africa Frontiers Risk, and Major General Alfred Khana, head of the Hawks Serious Commercial Crime Unit, about the challenges in fighting such crimes. It seems not just big companies that have the capacity to avoid accountability. Celebrities and the general public seem to be part of it too. Very warm welcome to both of you. So it seems if you can get away with it, a lot of people are doing it. Why is it so popular? What's going on here?
Well, I don't think it's rather a case of getting away with it. But cases are reported, investigations are ongoing. The only thing is just that maybe investigations are not so expeditious as people would have loved it to be. It takes time to investigate these cases as well as to prosecute. It takes time to put together proper charges, have everything done within certain time frames. But in the end, we do have cases like the one you mentioned in your introduction, the big of the investment where government pension fund lost monies. There are some good things happening. There's two phases to that investigation. On the one phase, we are very confident to take the matter to court very soon. On the other phase, the second phase of it, there's still a lot of work to be done. We're waiting for some reports coming forth from the...
Because it's been delayed, hasn't it? So what's the assumption there?
Not that it's delayed. You must just understand, first, you were speaking about the Steinhoff matter.
Yeah.
That matter is rather complex in nature. Like I explained when I appeared before some other, ordinarily, you have a case where a complainant would come to you and say to you, I've been defrauded. This is how it happened. This is the person who defrauded me. This is the amount to which he or she defrauded me. We then start off that case knowing fully well who we're investigating and what we have to do.
You can see the route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here we have, Steinhoff came to us with the Section 34 report to say, we've uncovered this. This is what we think happened, with emphasis on we think may have happened. Nobody knows who done it, how it was done, but there's an outcry and it needs to be investigated. We have appointed Company X to do a forensic audit. And now we are incumbent to wait for that company to finalize their report. Now, the difference here with the ordinary case, the rod lies within Steinhoff, not the current people. We don't know who's involved. So we are now dependent to get the report first. There's the second phase that I was referring to. Now, PwC, the company they appointed, are busy with their work, and we are waiting for that report. And I think that's public because we've been to Parliament. It has been explained in Parliament. They've been there. The CFO, the former CFO, gave a broad explanation in Parliament. It became public notice. And everybody know what he said. So we are waiting for that report coming from the PwC, who they appointed, to see what went wrong and to what extent and who should be actually held liable criminally.
Okay, let me bring in Michael here. I mean, you hear all of that and you just realize, wow, I mean, these crimes are pretty complex. But are we doing enough in South Africa? Are we up to the job? Everything seems to be just taking way too long.
I'm afraid not at the moment, no. Do you know, I think ordinary South Africans feel surrounded right now. And I'm talking about people on the street, small business owners, medium-sized business owners, directors of big corporates. They all are suffering from some type of commercial crime, whether it's a scam, whether it's an orchestrated EFT transfer scam. It's a nightmare. And the reality is the police...
Siege, right?
Absolutely, and it really is like that. And, you know, the criminals just come up with scams quicker than you can shut them down. And the police only have so many investigators working on this. And, you know, mainly we're talking about commercial crime tonight. The General's the head of the commercial crimes unit. And they're understaffed. You know, you can't have an investigating officer with 100 dockets trying to work cases properly. In my office, an investigator has perhaps 10 dockets that they can work effectively. So it's under-resourced, the entire system.
And is that because violent crime and petty crime is so rampant that the focus has been there rather than on white-collar crime?
No, that's a question for the General, because in reality, you know, my focus is on commercial crime, corporate crime, those type of things that affect businesses. Whether violent crime and those type of crimes have taken away resources, I'm sure they have. You need money to investigate anything. But you want to maybe add to that, John? Because
it seems as though we're on the back foot, you know, playing catch-up, and I think everybody is stunned at how good we are at commercial crime in this country and how prevalent it is.
Yeah, it is, because I think people don't really realize how diverse commercial crime has gone. Because if we should look at we deal with the sign of matter has to deal with investments. You have your investment fraud, which is big nowadays. And I'll come back to the investment side. You have, on the other hand, a big problem currently is these unauthorized debit orders that goes off everybody's account. And I think as we sit here, we all may be, I know I am also a victim of that. But it is so big. We sit with one matter, we sit with one case to the amount of 27,000 debit orders that went off. And you don't know where to start. I personally got involved. And I went to everybody, up to the banking ombudsman, to say, but what can we do? Because, in essence, banks have a fiduciary duty towards their clients. I am the one who says, nobody can take money out of your account without your consent. But it does happen. Now we have to ask, how does it happen? I went to the banks. Still, you couldn't get answers there, too. The other thing is this issue of government tender scams, where people are duped into entering into contracts for somebody phones you, says, I'm from this government department. On the document that's forwarded to you as a tender, say, go and look, we're looking for this type of article for which you have to go and buy. Can you give us a deposit, quotation? Everybody struggles to get business now. Somebody phones you to say, can you do this?
And you want to believe that?
Yes, and they would have to believe it. We can't say people are gullible, because business is tough. Then they get the first order, they deliver. Now what they do, they say, go and Google this product. When you Google the product, you are getting through to a supplier which sits, for instance, in Cape Town. That supplier says, well, I can supply you, but I'll supply directly to that company. That company never exists. The supply, the delivery is done, now you must be paid. You pay that company who have supplied it, because the government department also acknowledges receipt of the goods. So you pay this company. Then the guy says, before we can pay you, we have another bigger order for you. Oh, wow. Then they say, because this is now the work is coming in and the money, he just sees the dollars now. And when he goes to the government department and says, but you owe me now, when am I getting this money?
No, nobody's.
Then he finds out that this government department is legit, but this order never came from this government department. Now we have been...
Sorry, can I just stop you there? Because let's take a look. I mean, there are so many different common forms of commercial crimes in South Africa, so let's quickly go through them. Transfer fraud, this is when a financial staff member makes a payment into a family member's account. Most systems don't verify names for EFT, so changing the account number is sufficient. Stock theft, where there is stock, there will always be theft. Collusion between staff members and security officers is rife. Corruption, well, you know, this is common with procurement departments within companies, where buyers are bribed to place orders with specific companies. Tender fraud ranges from false tenders advertised in the name of large parastatals to more in-depth tender scams involving the tender database. Business identity, well, somebody's stolen my ability to speak, identity theft. Fraudsters open accounts of blue-chip companies. They purport to be management and submit all necessary documentation to open credit facilities. They then con service providers and stockists. Change of bank account details. Fraudsters use phishing scams to change bank details. I mean, you hear all that kind of stuff, and I don't even know
what it all means.
What it all means and where it all starts. How interlinked are all of those? I mean, is there...
They're not really, and that's the problem. Is you need specialised investigators to investigate all those different spheres. But the biggest one there that I will go back on is EFT transfers. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous that you can make a payment in somebody's bank account and that the name of the payee does not have to correlate with the bank account holder. And for some reason, the banks haven't come up with an ironclad reason why that is the case. I know they offer the services to some of their clients, but we keep seeing this over and over and over again.
And that actually allows us to happen, or encourages it.
Correct, because your staff can change. And the banks they don't communicate enough with the medium to smaller businesses to explain the problem to them and explain why you need 2 signatories or 2 releases. But ultimately, it's safer to pay with a cheque. It is.
Right.
And that's what I've seen. I mean, definitely.
Money under the bed kind of thing.
Unless you know exactly what invoice you are paying and you've checked the bank account number to the name of the account holder, you can't have faith in the payment system.
And also when you do have a name that you could link, you know, these acts, these deeds to, like Jooste, you know, every time he gets interviewed, he sort of poo-poos it and it's got nothing to do with him. And is that a way of, if you just remain above it, say that you know nothing about it, is that what they've been advised to do in order to get investigators to look the other way? And does it work?
There's nothing that you can put your finger on it to say, I can't say yes for a fact it does happen. But I'll be naive to say it does not happen. Because we are all human beings and human beings are fallible.
It's always the outrage. I mean,
yeah, and some are strong enough to withstand the temptation.
Give me my job back.
Some can withstand the temptation and others may fall for it. So the possibility of some of our members falling into that trap is there. I cannot sit here and say categorically it does happen because I have not seen it. But there are cases where our members have been convicted for doing these type of things. So one cannot say how rife it is, I wouldn't know. But it's painful to think that we sit with colleagues who may be compromising, not just the case, safety of their fellow colleagues in that way also. But coming back to the commercial, you know, the thing that we were now in the international conference in Dubai where we spoke about certain issues and on counterfeiting, intellectual property rights. And counterfeiting is one of the most underrated things, I think, areas, because there are various commodities being covered under counterfeiting. But the area which I think is the most important is food fraud, medicine, pharmaceuticals, because those are issues. You have commodities like clothing, car parts, that can be taken out and the real part can be placed in. But the damage that food fraud brings to you, imagine you use oil. You do not know what is in that oil.
Frightening.
You buy medicine, and people are, we sit with, I don't know, we came out of a recession now, it was saying we are out, but they are very poor people. You must go buy medicine. I was just saying to him off air, the one box costs, the real product was 100
Can you give us examples?
I don't want to, because now we are dealing with intellectual property. You understand? Because you cannot.
Everyone's panicking about what they
No. It's rather, let me say, if you are prescribed medicine by your doctor, go into your chemist and say, how much is this one? If you want anti-inflammatories. This box costs so much, 100 rand. But there are cheaper ones, generic ones, that you can get for 40 or 50 rand from the chemist. To buy it in a flea market where those people are not trained, they got it from somewhere. It did not pass the muster through the Department of Health on their checks and balances. It means you're putting yourself and your own life and your life of your children for whom you are buying it. Because it's not that person only is going to consume it.
Let me ask you both something. I mean, I'm sure, you know, in your line of work, there's been political interference in the past. I mean, what do you get? Can you do your work easily? Are you allowed to do what you do?
Yes. The reality is, you know, we're paid to do a specific job. So we get it done. And then when you start butting heads is where you're obviously knocking on the right doors. and that's when things do come to a halt. I mainly work in the corporate environment in commercial crime, so I'm not looking at political interference or any issues like that. So I don't have.
I should imagine when you get close, it might get a bit scary.
I'm sure, and that's part of the reason why we probably don't do it. You know, it's such a big industry, and there's so many companies offering forensic services and other investigative services now out there. And you know, this is a point I wanted to make earlier: is that I don't think the public are aware of the burden of proof that is required from a commercial crime perspective, especially with regard to something like Steinhoff. You know, there's a lot of people to be interviewed. You need to get a lot of evidence in order to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal court that a person did that. And financial statement fraud is one of the hardest things to prove. So the state, as I said, under-resourced, need time to investigate these things. Obviously, there's a lot of unhappy people who've lost money, very unhappy shareholders, but the state will get there. They're taking this case very, very seriously. But I think there's a process that's got to be followed. The private industry are able to do a lot of it quicker than the state, but they need the state because we can't just go and issue subpoenas willy-nilly. You know, we need to work together ultimately. Yes, sorry, Jane.
What about working in foreign jurisdictions? I mean, I know that's a problem with Steinhoff. Look at what happened with Estina. The charges dropped there because you couldn't get the information that you needed. How does South Africa overcome that? Because obviously that conversation needs to be improved in order for us to get what we want.
See, that all depends on if you look like the agreements with our other countries. It depends on the relationships that are there with those countries. Whether we do have treaties signed off at a higher level than when we are. And that all feeds into the Estina case, where there is a treaty, but it still depends on whether the other country is going to accede, because it also depends on their laws that they have. We may have a treaty, but then it may be subservient to some other conditions within their laws that may prohibit even or preclude them from acceding to your request. Because we do, on a continuous basis, even in my office, because I deal with all the mutual legal assistance coming from within the country, where we need access to bank accounts in that country. We need another matter that we are currently dealing with is when an attorney firm was RAF fraud, fleeced off accounts from a lot of people, and the people under investigation, they have now jumped to another country, in Australia, and we do not have extradition treaties with Australia. And they sit there and we are struggling, finding out how can we deal with it. And they're not the only ones who run to countries who sits where you can't get to, even some countries you can't even get to their bank account details. Forget about extraditing them from there.
Makes it so hard.
And it becomes difficult.
How long do people have to wait, generally? And I know we've got, so many different crimes here. I mean, do people at the end of the day get something back, and how do you get that something back?
I must say to you, it's very painful. I come from humble beginnings. And when you see people have lost everything, then you try your best to deal with this case so that this person can get this back, some sort of to restart his life. But unfortunately, in most cases, you may find that you can convict this person, but the fact that that person can get something back is very hard. Because in terms of our laws, in the Criminal Procedure Act, there's a section 300, which allows us, after the person has been convicted, then the judge, after having been requested there to, can make a compensatory order. It's like you instituting a civil claim, and there's now an order of restitution that must be made. So something similar to that is now being made in a criminal sense. But it also has different levels, according to the jurisdiction of the courts. You understand? So it's a problem. But the one area that I just needed to touch on when I spoke earlier about the investment side of it is we were sitting with one case of investment fraud that turned out to be a pyramid scheme, where there was 27, could be more, investors within and outside the borders of South Africa, virtual currencies. People were told, come to us, but when you invest, you don't invest South African currency. You change to virtual currency, and then you invest your virtual currency with us. We are not yet for that type of fraud. Let me be honest. We need a lot of skill. We have got a cybercrime team who assists.
Can I hold it there for a minute because we run out of time? Just very quickly, if somebody feels that they're a victim of crime, this sort of crime, what should they do?
Well, they need to go to the police and open a case or contact a private company to assist them. That's what private companies do. It's very tricky. Only private investigation companies really care about the recovery. We do immensely. And you need to get some money back, as we were saying. The state don't look for the money. They're not chasing the money. They're chasing the law and trying to make a point. And I think just quickly, if you want money back, seek the right advice.
And avoid those cryptocurrencies until we know better.
Correct.
Both of you, Michael
Pleasure.
Barker and Major General Khana, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Still ahead, should the National Executive take a 4% pay increase next year? This is Tonight with Jane Dutton.